My guest today is a maestro in the full sense of the term. He's not just an outstanding violinist, he's also a superb composer, all of which suggests he's a very special person. But what is he actually like? Well, let's see if the mystery unfolds as I introduce you to L Subramaniam. Welcome to the program.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You know, I gather you're what Salman Rushdie calls a midnight child. What's it like to have the stamp of destiny?
I very strongly believe in destiny and karma. So whatever happens is a destiny. And it's great to be associated with the birth of India as an independent nation at that time. Being born is a special thing for me.
And in fact, you've had a unique life. For instance, you grew up in Jaffna in the early 50s before the horrible troubles began. What was that like?
It was a very, very happy time earlier because we were in a very beautiful place on top of a hill and everything, till suddenly everything changed. When the whole Tamils were being attacked, we were running for life. But the early stage was a very, very peaceful and beautiful stage where every day there was music. My father was always there working with us. Beautiful scenery and beautiful place. Mother
and no hint of any impending trouble whatsoever?
Nothing, nothing.
So when that night your world collapsed, what exactly happened?
Basically, we were told that the whole family is going to be killed that day because suddenly the riot started. All the Sri Lankan community wanted to get rid of Tamils, or Indians in other words. So all of a sudden we didn't believe because we never read anything. My parents didn't read anything, but there were instances already have started. So when I was coming from school, one of my mother's very, very close friend and a neighbor, Sri Lankan lady, she started crying and said, if you don't leave immediately, the entire family will be wiped out. So we got a shock, and she also said, your well has been poisoned, so don't drink the water. Then we took it very seriously.
And what happened?
Immediately that night we were trying to leave after the sunset because there were a bunch of people ready to attack the home. Unfortunately, we were also, or fortunately, we were in a place surrounded by only Sri Lankan community, not a Indian-dominated area, not Tamil-dominated area. So we know that we are very visible that way, on top of the hill, and nobody will prevent us except our neighbor, which is a couple of people. So we had to leave after the sunset, walk through the rubber estate.
That must have been frightening.
Yeah. And only thing I remember my father telling us, no noise, no noise, no noise. Because we were 6 children with my mother and father going through the thing. We know something was drastically wrong. We should not make any noise. But sunset, it was getting dark. We were just walking around.
You had to hide in a neighbor's home or a friend's home for weeks at a time?
Yes. We ended up in one of father's friend's place. He worked for the mill in Velavetta, very famous mill. So we were there and we had to stay there. We couldn't get out of the mill because the mill had a security system. But we were there, but it was a nice house. But at the same time, we know we have to be there. We can't go out to be...
Does this trauma still haunt you?
It was a passing thing, but it was that time, it was, we didn't know what was going to happen tomorrow. We might be killed or we might just survive, but the fear of being, we might be attacked was there, very much there.
Your family returned to India virtually destitute. Everything that you had, you left behind. So how difficult was it to remake your life in India?
It was very difficult for my father because we were all young children, 6 of us. So for us to get educated and get fed and find a place to live, my father had to really, really struggle and work hard. Initially, we stayed for a very short time with one of my father's sisters and brother's house. But then soon we have to move, and my father has to teach and teach.
He used to cycle long distances to be able to teach and earn money?
Yeah, to earn money, he used to go by cycle to different houses to teach, and people used to come to learn from him.
So you've seen your parents struggle to keep the family going?
Yes.
Did that build a very close bond in the family?
Yes. And you see, your mother, father, both of them working so hard from the time you wake up till you go to bed, you see them work and work and work. So so whenever you get anything in life, this is a blessing.
It made you realize the value of just being alive.
Yes, yes, very, very true.
The paradox is that alongside the turmoil in your personal and physical life, your musical career was nonetheless progressing steadily. I gather your father originally wanted you to sing.
Yeah, I started learning vocal because my elder brother Vaidyanathan was playing the violin. So he wanted me to start vocal singing. My sisters were singing. But then I had diphtheria when I was 2 years, I believe, and one of the doctors told him I might lose the voice. So he thought, let me put him on something else because he thought I was talented because whatever he used to sing, I used to repeat, I believe, tell this for us. So it was a blessing in disguise.
Violin, however, was the second choice. It wasn't the first one then, huh?
Yes.
What made you pick on the violin? Was it simply that you wanted to follow in Daddy's footsteps?
Yes, because I wanted to be like my father. I wanted to play like my father.
You idolized him?
Yes, the father was everything for us, for me at least. So I wanted to be like him. So he played the violin, so I also wanted to play the violin.
There's a little secret, though, that you've kept from many people. I gather, although you haven't really sung since you were 2, you've begun singing now in records, in albums with your new wife. Isn't that true?
I don't sing the album, but basically, sometimes in a choir for the chorus, things like that for my wife's album, I sing with my children. Because I have written the music and I need a very, very low voice, then I put the voice myself instead of...
Sing a snippet of something
Oh
so
my
we
God.
can see that voice and hear
If Kavita listens to it, then completely she's going to disown me. Sada manadil varum en devame, sada manadil varum. It's one of the compositions I've written which have been recorded by Kavita.
What was, of course, the world's loss in terms of a singer became the world's gain in terms of the violin. Your first performance publicly was in Jaffna before you left when you were just 6. And I gather it happened completely by surprise.
Yes, I never expected it because the organizers who organized the concert, it was a concert for my 2 sisters and my father playing with them. It was a festival in a Murugan temple, Lord Subramaniam's temple. And in Jaffna, they used to have a fantastic festival with all-night festival. So one of those festivals my father was playing, then he wanted me to also launch my first performance because as we call it a special concert, first Arangetram. Normally they do it in a temple in auspicious day. But the organizers refused to give him permission or told him I was too small, it's a big festival, I shouldn't do it. So my father, in any case, took my violin and all of a sudden while they were singing in between, he announced that I'm going to play a solo. So I was afraid because if I don't play when I go home, it'll be a terrible thing. I can't face my father. If I play, I know the organizers won't be happy because they didn't want me to play. On the top of it, there are thousands of people sitting in front of you. So it was like a terrible thing, but I distinctly remember, but once I played, the whole thing changed.
Were you nervous?
I was very nervous. I was more than nervous, I was afraid because if I don't play, father will get angry. If I play bad, it will be worse. And at the same time, if I play, the organizers are going to catch because once I finish playing, they're going to say and shout, why did you play?
A real test by fire.
Yeah.
When you came back to India, you and your brothers formed a trio. Was that fun?
Yeah, it was my father's idea because violin was basically an accompanying instrument. So he wanted to raise the status of the violin to a mainstream instrument, not only in India, in an international scene. So he used to tell me, go and listen to great people like Menuhin, Grappelli, and all those people. So he formed the trio. He taught, all 3 of us ended up as violinists, so he taught us and we started the trio because it was father's idea.
The amazing thing is, side by side, learning the violin, you also trained to be a doctor. How easy was it to do medicine and music together?
I loved to read when I was young. So, but also when my parents said you have to have a degree because being a violinist, they were not sure whether, I was not sure, nobody was sure whether you're going to be successful to feed a family because musical life was not easy those days, particularly in the south when you were a violin accompanist. So I never thought it's going to be, my career is going to turn out to going to be a soloist like that. So when they said you have to have a degree, I wanted to be a doctor because I love medicine, I love science. So I did medicine, MBBS, simultaneously I was also doing the homeopathic, the Ayurvedic correspondent course, all those things.
So at what point in time did you commit yourself to music rather than medicine?
When I finished the second year, I did my Trinity College London exams in music. I also heard a very, very fantastic violinist, Joshua Heifetz, playing Bach. That made me realize, what am I doing? I have to do something with the music and violin and write music. So that's what I want to be and not being a doctor.
What did your parents say when you told them that you didn't want to be a doctor?
No, I told them I want to continue violin and I want to do studies in violin. They said, My father was very happy. My mother said, no, you just have, first you finish a degree.
She was a very practical lady.
Yeah, she said you should have a piece of paper, so if you're not successful, you should go and be able to feed yourself.
Do you think she was right, looking back today?
She was not wrong, because, you know, you never know. Because education also brought a different angle for me. Because anything I do, because I have a scientific background, I tend to analyze more, I read a lot, write, and when it's come to composition, more knowledge you can retain, you write for orchestras better.
The big shift in your life, they say, happened when you got a full music scholarship to study music in Los Angeles. And yet I'm told this only happened because the university in Chennai refused to permit you to read music there.
Yeah, basically I wanted a simple degree in South Indian classical music. But I was told that you go to Annamalai University, get a diploma, 4 years or 2 years, whatever it is, then you come here. Then I said, look, already I've spent 6.5 years to become a doctor, including the house surgery. Then if I spend another 6 years to get a music degree, I would have spent half of my life. So I said no. So I just did my Western diploma, LTCL practical exam. Then I went to US. I got scholarship. I went to US.
What was the United States like? You were all alone,
Yes.
a strange country, no family, and also you were a vegetarian in a society that doesn't know how to cater to vegetarian diets.
At that time, yes. To be in US, one has to have a very, very solid ground in your own religion and your own foundation, your own culture. Otherwise, it's a lot of distraction. So if you have a dedication and hard work and you know who you are and what you want to be, then it's the place to go. When I went there, I mean, I can't cook, I couldn't do anything, so I used to have bread with jam for breakfast, bread with pickle for lunch and dinner, and I couldn't even, make my own tea till I went there. Slowly I started opening a can, making vegetable soup and things like that. But also the whole leaving the family and being, I was homesick so much you wouldn't believe that. So that pushed me to work till 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, till I'm so exhausted I go and just lie down in bed to sleep.
As a result, you went through a 2-year course, I believe, in just 9 months flat.
Yeah. It was, originally I was told that for the MA it might take 4 years since I don't have a BA music. But they said you can also finish it earlier. So, but because of the homesick feeling, I just worked so hard and practiced and practiced.
Now, something else that happened in America is that you began composing for the first time. And I'm told that the first time you wrote something for your course at Los Angeles, the teacher turned around and said you were a genius. Were you surprised?
Yeah, because I never written for Western music at that time. Because in India I have done only Indian compositions for South Indian music. In fact, I've written one of these songs when I was 6 years old. I did a song in praise of Ganesh, which I've recently recorded after all these years. But writing for Western music happened after I went there. So all of a sudden, I didn't know, I just started learning in theory and everything. And I wrote a composition exercise for the composition. All of a sudden, and there are so many papers the teacher used to go through, and picked up mine and wrote in the board. He said, who wrote this thing? So initially I thought I made a mistake or something. He said, who wrote this particular thing? Then I had to get up and said, I wrote it. So that immediately, when he said, you are a genius, I got a shock. I thought he was going to say, why did you write like that? Because I'd never...
You thought you were going to be told off.
Told off in front of the whole people, yeah.
Looking back today, how much has the American experience contributed to the L Subramaniam sitting in front of me?
I learned composition there. I met some of the greatest jazz artists there. I've done projects, in New York Philharmonic, Maestro Mehta, or playing with many for United Nations, or working with people like George Duke, Stanley Clarke, Herbie Hancock.
America, in other words, opened doors that otherwise might have stayed closed.
Yeah, because I had so much of creative urge to write composition, and these people, we collaborated so much on composition, which opened a lot of doors for me there.
Let's take a break. I want to come back in part 2 and talk about the compositions you went on to write and some of the amazing people you've collaborated with. That's in part 2. See you in a moment. Welcome back. My guest is the violinist and composer L Subramaniam. Let's talk about your music. You've collaborated with some of the biggest names in the West. But is it true that, in fact, the relationship with Stefan Grappelli began by accident when you met in the green room of the Champs-Élysées Theatre?
Yes. It was a concert of mine. I was playing for the Radio France, which was being broadcast. Suddenly I heard somebody knocking the door, and I opened the door. It was Mr. Grappelli. And I was surprised and shocked because everybody knows Grappelli. And I thought it was a fantastic thing to happen. Then later on, he very politely said, I'm just leaving. I said, won't you stay for the concert? He said, there's no seats available. And I told the director of the Radio France, Okora Lebu, in our country, if a legendary person comes like that, we will create a seat for them. He cannot leave. He has come all the way to listen to the concert. I said, he has to be there. That's how the whole thing started first.
Almost an accident, and yet it led to one of the greatest combinations we've seen.
Yes, it was a miracle. He also feels that because after the concert, we talked about it. We said we'll do something. We came to LA. I was traveling. He was traveling. We had only 2 days where both of us were available. Out of that 1 day, I got the studio. So I've written the music. We went to the studio and we just did the whole album, the call Conversation.
You met Yehudi Menuhin almost in similar circumstances. It was his 70th birthday when you turned up, and you ended up playing with him.
Yeah, I was asked to perform for his birthday. Somebody suddenly called and said, would you come and perform in Bonn for this? I said, sure.
But
And
you were surprised.
I was very surprised because I never officially met him. So all of a sudden when I played, he was in the audience. There were a lot of political leaders there. Immediately after I played, he just came, walked across, jumped on the stage and came and hugged me. He said...
You mean he hugged you at the first meeting, the first time he saw you?
On the stage. After I finished playing, he just got onto the stage. He was in the front row. Suddenly got off the stage, came to the stage and hugged me and said, I never heard so powerful improvisation. So that started the whole thing. I never expected something like that to... I thought I'll meet him. I was so happy to just meet him. But then later on we started playing together and he wrote letters to me and he came to India to receive Lakshmanarayana Global Music Award. It became a lifetime friendship for me, which I can never forget.
At the other end of the musical spectrum, so to speak, you've also done music for films, 2 of Meera Nair's films, Salam Bombay and Mississippi Masala. Was it the challenge that attracted you, or did she make an offer you simply couldn't refuse?
No, basically it was because of Vijay, because Meera kept calling Vijay and talking to her, saying that this is a film I've done, first major film, feature film.
They were friends, were they?
No. She found out my telephone number and she talked to my wife. So I told Vijay at the time, I was not into films at that time. My elder brother Vaidyanathan was doing a lot of films. So I said, probably he can do it. He said, to an Indian subject, you have to see that. So then Vijay said, this is a lady director calling and won't you at least look at the thing and do something about it? So I agreed. So finally, between my flight from Paris to LA, I stopped in New York. She put up a special preview for me. And when I saw the film, I was really taken aback. She said, this is basically a true story, Salam Bombay. I said, fine, I'll do it, provided you can come 4 days to LA. We'll finish the movie. Before that, I really didn't want to get involved in it because I was so busy with doing...
But the interesting thing is that if your wife hadn't pushed and cajoled you, it might never have happened.
Yes, very, very true.
You were talking a moment ago about Vijay, your first wife. Is it true that the two of you met in George Harrison's home in 1974?
Yes. We were all part of a big group concert tour, Ravi Shankar Family and Friends, where George Harrison was presenting and promoting Raviji's tour. And he was also playing. So we all gathered at George's house, Henley on Thames. That was the first time I met her, yes.
Were you drawn to each other instantly?
Yes. In a way, we met, but slowly it became very, very strong attraction with each other.
In your interviews, you've described her as your soulmate. You've even once used the word goddess.
She was very, very peaceful, and very hardly you see a person who, not after material things that much. She was very beautiful and very, very simple, and she almost, whenever I made a decision to just switch over to me, I had big offers to do a lot of things financially, which I didn't want to do. So at that time she said, no, you have to do, you have meant for
She influenced you a lot.
Yeah, she said, you meant for violin, so you just play the violin.
Sadly, in 1995, after a protracted illness, she died.
Yes.
She must have been shattered.
Yeah, it was almost, it was not only her death, but subsequently a lot of things happened at that time, which really completely shattered me, and it was totally never, I never imagined I'll go through that kind of trauma and tragedy in my life, yes.
What took you through it? Perseverance or music?
Basically, the association with a lot of spiritual people and music, of course. Because all along, even when my parents died, my father died particularly, I almost stopped playing. When my mother died, I stopped doing anything. So then she pushed me into saying that, father wanted you to do so much, bring the violin to the international level and things like that. After doing all these things, we stopped. It's just opposite of what he wanted. So same thing. She also wanted me to do a lot of things like global fusion concept, develop that, write big composition, things like that. So after a while, I realized if I stop it, that's not what she wanted because all her life.
Her memory kept you going.
And I started, the first piece I wrote for her was Global Symphony, which we played for the United Nations 50th year, and then also we did in Berlin. 45 million people heard it on the radio. So I knew I was doing something in her memory, so I started writing and composing, just going through my own emotion through music.
4 or 5 years ago, you got married again to singer Kavita Krishnamurti. Have you found happiness again?
Yeah, she's also a very, very simple, beautiful person. Because,
You like simple people.
yeah, simple and beautiful, inner and outer. Because the inner, for me, it's like, it's not the, success. She's a very, very successful performer. She has been dominating the Bollywood scene for many, many years.
She says that my husband is a romantic. Has she opened a new part of you?
Yes, I guess so. Because all of a sudden, after all the depression, I never ever thought I will marry again. Because my life was, I just spent time to develop my own music and continue till the last, playing music however long I can play. But all of a sudden, it changed the whole thing. I met her, we started working on projects. I started writing for vocals. And it was totally...
You're a new man after the second marriage.
Totally, that's different. And the amount of affection she shows to the children, that's a very, very strong point for me, because it's like, she not only loves me so much, but also I love her so much, and the children, who belongs to Viji, but she treats them like her own.
It couldn't have been easy for her to marry into as a second wife and find a full-fledged family, yet she's, it seems, made that accommodation very easily.
Yes, that's what I meant. She's a very, very pure, simple, spiritual person, and I met her because of her singing. Basically, I was looking for a singer who can sing some of my very, very special compositions.
And you found a wife instead.
Yeah. And I heard a lot of tapes, but this particular tape I selected of her singing, it turned the whole history for me.
Are you today a happy man and a satisfied man?
Yes, definitely.
And you found both musical satisfaction and emotional satisfaction?
Yes, definitely.
A pleasure getting to know you.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot. Pleasure to be here.